they have been years in the making. So there were researchers doing this before, doing research on coronaviruses. As you remember, and some people might not remember, there were two other coronaviruses that nearly led to pandemics. One was SARS in 2002 and 3, and the other one was MERS 13, 14, right? So these researchers are researchers just like me that had a lab. No one knew about them because they studied this obscure virus called, coronavirus. And they just continued working. They continued working on it. And funding went away, interest went away, and they just kept on working on it. So the structure of the protein, that spike protein, which is like the key to the lock of our cells that the virus has, that structure, it's critical to figure out what it is so you can make the vaccine. That scientific paper was published in 2017. Okay. So on MERS, right? On a not, obviously SARS-CoV-2 wasn't known, but this was close enough that when the information on SARS-CoV-2 came up, they were ready. Okay. So yes, there has been incredible investment from the government to get the vaccines going, but the science was already there. And I think if there's anything that I want to communicate to people, is that particular approach of using the spike protein, and using the mRNA-based vaccine, which is a code that basically encodes proteins in all of cellular life, so in us and in everyone else, and it just makes our body make that antigen, right? So we don't have to inject the virus, kill a virus, anything like that. We just have the code in there, and then our body makes it, and we make our own immune response.
My understanding is the fastest a vaccine has ever been approved it took 4 years or something for it to be created.
Yeah.
So you're saying though, because that was kind of my concern. I was like, are we doing this way too fast? But it sounds like it's actually been in the process. This isn't anything new that I think a lot of people might not be aware of. Is that correct?
Yeah. So two things. Yes, it's been faster than ever, but the actual process of how the science is conducted and how the efficacy and safety trials are conducted have actually not been altered that much. The reason things took so long before was because someone would have a lab like mine, and they would be like, oh, this spike protein looks like a good thing to look at, right? And then you would sort of start assembling your equipment and whatnot, trying to get funding for it, right? And so this is something that might take years, and in fact, it did take Jason McClellan and Kizzmekia Corbett several years to sort of figure this out and get the funding and everything in line and hire the people, and then you get the structure, right, of this protein, and you're like, okay, great, and then you're like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to deliver it, right? And so all those things take time, and then you go into your animal models, right? And so all these things were done in sequence before, right? And at each point, you have to find someone to fund it, someone to commit to it, a partner, right? And that commercial partner has to be willing to spend the money to do it, right? And what company is going to spend money on a virus that isn't circulating anymore, right? When MERS sort of went away, and then people were like, well, I'm not going to invest in this, right? And so then you have that point, and then you have to go to phase 1, then you had to go to the phase 2, and then you had to go to phase 3, and all these things happened spread out, right? So what has been different about now is that fortunately we had these researchers that were really honing in on coronavirus because they follow the scientific evidence, and they said, hey, these are 2 viruses that have emerged in 20 years. Another one is coming, right? And so number one, they were ready with the science. So that was already there. In fact, also on the commercial side, Moderna is a small company that everyone knows now, but no one knew about before. But they have also been working on this concept of mRNA for a while now, right? Which is why sort of they could report on greater stability of their vaccine compared to, say, Pfizer, which didn't necessarily have that experience working with this process. So that's another thing. And then what's happened to speed up the thing is the money. It's the will, right? It's the will to say, hey, phase 1 and 2 trials are important, but they're sort of the same. Like phase 2 is usually just a bigger version of the phase 1. So they're like, okay, let's combine phase 1 and 2 and we'll speed it up that way. But most importantly, we're just going to put a ton of money to this, right? And just you manufacture the vaccine and have it ready to go. And we're going to do this for all, not for all the vaccine candidates, but for a bunch of vaccine candidates. And then you won't, there's no risk for you, right? And so that's what has been put at risk is the capital, is the money, not the safety, right? So that's been that's where it's warp speed. It's not warp speed on the science or on the safety. It's warp speed on the money, on the logistics. So I was reading an article the other day. Some of the things that Operation Warp Speed did, this was an article in the New York Times, basically like Moderna was missing a pump or something like that, right? And it was like stuck in like some car and somewhere and in a truck, in a delivery truck. And like they basically came in like movie style and just like went into the truck and grabbed the pump, right? And like put it on a plane and like got it to the factory. Like it's like that type of thing that would have caused a delay of 3 weeks because you're waiting for a part to do your research or your development. That type of thing is gone, right? Because you have like all the will of and all the resources of the U.S. government bearing on this, right? And in the end, these are actually not huge amounts of money in the grand scheme of things for what we're talking about, which is, saving lives, saving the global economy, all these things, right? So that's what's really been doing, and so it's been. Hopefully, my hope is that this model now going forward, people realize that this is like paying for your fire and your police, right? We all support our firemen, right? And firewomen, our fire people, and our fire departments with the expectation that they'll be there if something burns down. But we don't want stuff to burn down, but we don't mind having them there because we're going to need them at some point. So hopefully we'll get into a period where this is the same thing with vaccines, where we're like, okay, we're just gonna spend money on this. This is something that's going to be government supported. And we want our taxpayer dollars going for this because we want to be safe if a pandemic hits. This can't be left up to profit. It's one of those things that has to be a common good for society.
What's the difference? Is there a difference between these vaccines and how they work inside people's bodies?
So yeah, so basically I'm going to talk about 2 of them that have been reported to have virtually identical efficacy in the trials. One is made by Moderna and one is made by Pfizer, right? And the team behind the Moderna one is based at NIH, and is this group of people that I've mentioned that has been working on this for a very long time. So they had a partnership before all of this happened with Moderna already. Okay, so people need to understand that. The Pfizer vaccine is basically following the same procedure and the same general principle, and in fact the same protein and everything, because scientists, but we publish our results, we share them, we want people to use them. So the Pfizer trial uses essentially the same approach, right? Except they're not working directly with the scientists. Now there's probably some differences that are proprietary in terms of like the really specific molecular details of the mRNA or the solution that it's in, but in essence, it is the same approach, right? They're using, let me put it this way, they're using the same recipe. It's 2 companies that are baking the same a cake from the same recipe. Obviously, there's always going to be differences. People are going to, add a little bit, like someone's going to add powdered sugar at the end, right? And others going to put like a little frosting, but essentially they're going with the same recipe. And what's amazing is, think about this. These 2 trials are huge, 30,000 people, right? 44,000 people for Pfizer. they come up with almost exactly the same number. It's an experiment. It's completely independent experiment. They almost hit exactly the same amount. And so that should really give people confidence. Like, you do an experiment, 2 separate experiments, one with 30,000 people and with 44,000 people, and you come up with this. I mean, like, we try to do stuff in the lab with like cells in a dish and try to control things that closely, and it's hard to get numbers that close in replicate experiments. And so here we're doing it across this huge scale with people who have like, their own lives and are, we're complicated, but in spite of all of that, it just works, and it's a dead ringer.
So it really is effective, is kind of what you're saying. Is that correct?
It basically is effective, and basically we have a lot of confidence because we have a whole separate trial that's based on the same one. So there are going to be more vaccines. Probably the next one that's closest is Johnson and Johnson. In the UK, also the Oxford vaccine. The Johnson and Johnson one is different, and the Oxford vaccine is different. These 2 ones that just started are based on the same recipe that I'm talking about, and they will work essentially the same in your body. You said about the flu, which I think a lot of people will be familiar, is we're gonna put, for the flu shot, we have parts of the virus. So if we think of the virus as a physical thing, we're gonna put pieces of it in there, right? It's gonna be either a dead virus or parts of the virus that are in there, right? These vaccines are sort of fundamentally different. And by these vaccines, I mean the Pfizer one and the Moderna one. These are gonna say, okay, those pieces that I would have put in there from an actual virus, I'm actually going to have the code that makes that, right? Like, I think everyone understands sort of the concept of the genetic code, right? We have DNA in ourselves that's like, it's the recipe for making humans, right? And so it's the recipe for a lot of proteins that we have in our body, right? And so what these vaccines are doing is taking that code for that piece of the virus that we want, that's going to activate and unleash our immune system, and putting that snippet of code into our cells, and then saying, hey, cells, manufacture this and make this. So it's making our body manufacture this part, and then our body reacts immunologically to it, because it's gonna be like, it's actually not unlike how viruses work with us and how they hack us. They come in and they just put their genetic code in our cells, right? And make copies of themselves. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, viruses have been around for a long time. They do things well. How can we learn from this, right? It's like, okay, they hack our cells, let's hack them back, right? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna insert just a small piece, which is just that one protein, but we're not gonna manufacture the protein. We're just gonna insert the code, and we're gonna insert it in our cells, and then our cells are gonna manufacture this protein, and then we're gonna have an immune response. Now obviously our cells are smart, right? And they're cautious. They're gonna manufacture this, but they're gonna be like, what the hell is this protein? We don't know what this is. This is foreign. And so we're gonna attack it. That attack is the immune response, right? And this is why people, when they have this vaccine, and I think this is something really important that I want to communicate to people, is that you can get side effects from this, right? Because your body is mounting an immune response. So people might have fevers, might have chills, might feel lethargic, right? And so there's been variation in this. And so if you read some of the popular press, there are a couple of trial participants that have come out and talked about the side effects of these particular vaccines. And I think people should be prepared. They always resolve. They're not life-threatening, but they don't feel good. And I'm gonna come out to you here. I'm a participant in the trial, in the Moderna trial. So I know from experience myself that that the symptoms can be bad, right? That they can be debilitating and all that, but they are resolved really quickly, and it's just the immune response, right? And I think people who've taken different types of vaccines before, or especially people who have kids, you know, like I have kids, and when I would give the shots to my little one, they would sleep for a long time. You know why? They would have these like extra long naps, and it's completely natural. It's because their body is working overtime, right, to make the immune response, right? And so that's what happens with this one. And so the rate of those things are low, but I think people should be prepared. Hey, you know, like, let's plan this out. Like, if this is going to lay me out for a couple hours, you know, maybe the one partner in a household, for example, should take it one day, and another partner should take it another day, right? So we're going to have to think about that thing. But what we know is even people in the early trials who were hit with a like really high dose, because scientists were trying to figure out where it was, you know, they had these effects, but they went away. So we now have a lot of information of like, where is that risk reward where we're hitting, you know, a dose that's going to provide a good immune response, so we're protected, but it's not going to cause too many side effects. So I just want people to be prepared, you know, and not other people. I think one of the NewsHour reporters, PBS NewsHour, came out and talked about their experience with it. And so for the second dose for them was very mild. They didn't have an issue. For me, I was like, honey, I have to take a nap. I told my wife I got to take a nap for a couple hours, you know, and which is very like, I don't do that. And so it's going to vary, right? And what we know from the preliminary trial data is that the rate is low, but I just want people to be prepared and not freak out that like, oh, we rushed this, and this is, you know, this is not known, right?
I think that's such an important thing to like tell people, is like, you know, there might be some side effects, so they don't get scared, you know. I think that's super important. And so is there 3 shots with the one you're on?
It's 2. So for
2.
both of them, it's 2, and it's approximately 3 to 4 weeks apart. And this is going to be really important. I want people to basically, you know, mark it in their calendar, because it's going to be very important to get that booster, because again, they studied this, right? They looked at the data, and they saw for the people where they did 2 shots, you know, that's when when their antibodies were at the level where we think the protection is. So you really are going to need that second booster shot. These are pretty quick processes, right? You just go in, you get your shot, you're out. Okay. And I think, you know, it's going to be worth it. Like we've been through this, you know, what are we on month 9 now?
We've been working from home for almost a year. So,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so at the end, you know, it's, you know, just schedule it, and, you know, and then when we all get it together, you know, then we'll have, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, and things can start to go back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind, is there anything about your vaccine trial, you know, subjects? I think you have such a unique, you know, perspective with that. Was there anything that surprised you about it?
Yeah, so something that surprised me about it is I thought that basically I was going to go in there, they were going to give me the shot, and that was it. But this is a study, like, and the study, this might change just because of approval, and it's sort of unprecedented. But the study is for 25 months. Okay, so they're gonna track us for a long time, and so they make it really convenient. There's an app. And so I log my symptoms when I had my vaccine, my shot. By the way, I don't know for a fact that I do have the shot because it's blinded, right? It's what's called blinded, placebo controlled, which means half of the people get saline and half of the people get, you know, and people are actually pretty bad at guessing historically. But you know,
you showed a little bit of symptoms. It sounds.
I showed a little bit of side effects, so I'm gonna guess, but I got my shot, and I thought that was it. But no, when I got the injections, for 7 days, I'm reporting daily, right? And then since, it's been every week, right? And they, you know, take blood draws and all this, because this is how this is how they monitor things. This is a real scientific study that we are participating in and providing data for. And by the way, when I was feeling a little bit tired and fatigued, that day, as part of the trial, I was supposed to take my temperature. I took my temperature. Sure enough, I had a fever. And so immediately, it was crazy because I think it was a Saturday or something like that. And immediately the trial people called me and were like, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on?" And so there's very
change once it's FDA approved, like, or because it's kind of safe at that point where you're in a trial. Do you think that'll change once it's approved by the FDA?
So yes. So it's very unclear now because this is a situation we haven't been in yet. It's sort of unclear how much the study is going to go on, because at some point there's going to be an ethical imperative for the companies that are running the trial to provide the vaccine to the placebo participants, because at that point we know how effective it is. And so, and if we know that it's safe, it's sort of incumbent on them to actually provide that to them. And so that then changes the nature of the study a little bit. So it's no longer a controlled trial. And so it may turn into an observational trial. That really depends on like how the trial, the companies that are running the trial and the NIH and everyone that's involved, how they want to proceed along with the trial. So it will change the nature of the trial a little bit, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen.
Okay, but it sounds like to you kind of the surprising thing was how on top of it they were a little bit in regards to tracking your symptoms and everything.
I was very surprised. So like this is a real study and people are providing data. Yeah. And therefore, if you're thinking of joining a trial, there's other trials. I highly recommend that, but just know that it's a bit of a commitment. Another thing is they pay you for it, right? It's not a ton of money, but they sort of pay you for your time, and they load you up with a prepaid credit card. Okay. And then when you go to visit, you get a certain amount of money, and this varies from trial to trial, but they're doing that because they realize it takes you time to fill this out, to take your temperature and all these things. So one, it's a serious study, and two, they're on top of it. They're on top of safety. They're really trying to do the absolute best they can.
Really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that with you. I think that's going to be so interesting for me, and I'm sure it will be for viewers too. And then I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but I just, if you don't mind me just asking you from viewers, we get questions, and we've had so many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just ask you maybe one or two. I think most people are worried about you kind of covered it, but I think a lot of people are worried about the health effects that it might have. So these kind of go two in one. Like one said, how do I know the vaccine will not cause me to develop cancer or an autoimmune disorder? Or someone said, how do I know the coronavirus vaccine will not adverse health effects for me? So it's kind of I think you touched on there might be side effects, but is there the chance of anything more serious developing from vaccines? Because I know a lot of people are worried about that.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely I think it's a valid worry. I think it's important to ask these questions. Basically, as I mentioned, we expect side effects of this, and most of those have been basically immediately around when it's happened. In terms of the long term, we have a little bit of a picture because the phase 1 of the trial that I'm in was started back in March. Okay, so this was very early on. So we have those people, and I suspect that at some point they will talk about those people, and it's a smaller group, but we will be able to track those people long term and see how they're doing. And remember, they're still tracking me and other trial participants as it goes on. Remember, this is not going to be available in wide circulation for everyone until probably the spring, right? maybe even the
So that'll
summer.
be a year since the first
So
trial.
that'll be about a year since those people, and myself, I got it like in September. So you'll have a little bit of a wider picture of seeing like how the long term is being. Obviously, like we can't tell for certain what's going to happen very long term because we just made this, right? But what I'll tell you is based on the science of this, we really don't anticipate many side effects like going forward, anything long term, really. And I think what people have to think about is, what do we know for certain? We know for certain that COVID kills. Like, we know that. And so it's a balance between being protected from that for something that with all of the data we have shows that it's safe versus, taking your chances, right? So I think that's the type of question that people have to ask themselves. Everything has a risk, right? Everything you take, I mean, even like Tylenol, right? Like there's been manufacturing problems with Tylenol in the past, right?
Yeah.
So I completely understand that this sounds like very esoteric. We're going really fast. It's a new virus. And so I think the concerns are well placed. But like I said, when you look at how this vaccine has been developed, the speed of it actually doesn't have much to do with skimping on the science or skimping on the safety. Those parts have actually been pretty much similar to previous trials. So that's a great question. So just keep on, if you're concerned about that, what I would recommend people to do is first, find people who've taken it. I'm one of them. You can find me on social media. I'm very happy to engage with people on that. I'm at Sociovirology, SOCIO, virology. So like social viruses, that's what I study. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm very happy to engage with people. One of the co-inventors of the vaccine is on Twitter as well, Kizmikia Corbett. She's at Kizzy PhD. And she's very happy to engage with people even on her busy schedule. So we're here and we're able to answer the questions. And so you too follow people in your community that have taken the vaccine and ask them what has been their experience, and follow the data. The studies will be published. The results we have were preliminary, right? So they've been like sort of press releases. And a lot of us scientists, we're waiting to see like what the data is, what are they measuring specifically? And then we'll have a lot more information. I'm happy to come back and talk about, like, do a deep dive into the paper and really translate that and tell people how it is. And we still have some time, we still have some time. So this is in wide distribution. So you will have more information. And some of those trial participants are going to be, a year into it. Some of us are going to be like, 8-9 months into it. So that's what I would say if people are concerned.
Perfect. Well, I think that covered the most important question. And I think people are just asking that in different ways from viewers. So I think you totally crushed it. Was there anything else I missed that you wanted to cover?
Yes. The one thing that I want to cover is, again, I mentioned what the timeline of this is. It's light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not at the end of the tunnel yet. So people, please, I know the holidays are coming up. I know people want to get together. I know it's been long, but we're so close. Okay, we're so close. We know that travel, that gatherings with people outside of your pod, this is where things happen. And, people have, basically brought the coronavirus home, right? And their mom, their grandma has died. I mean, imagine living with that, right? I mean, it's a virus, right? So it's going to do what it's going to do. And it's in a way, no one's fault, but you don't want to live with that question in your mind of like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have traveled cross country and met with like 5 families that I haven't had contact with, So be honest with yourselves. Do things out of love this year, So in some ways, the best thing you can do to show your love to one of your loved ones is stay away physically.
Yeah.
Do your Zoom call, do all that, but really, please be cautious, because the cases are going up like crazy, and they're just going to keep on going up. And it's going to be a dark winter. It really is. This is going to be the worst period of the pandemic. And I just need all of y'all, especially my communities of color, my Latinos, okay, my Black folk. We are being disproportionately affected by this. So please protect yourselves, protect your loved ones, so that we can get to the end of the tunnel and see the light. And then we're going to have a massive party. It's going to be awesome.